Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, and also a dear friend of the Iranian resistance, and that is none other than Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg of the United States Army, and also former U.S. Special Envoy for Ukraine. Please join me in welcoming General Kellogg.
Mrs. Rajavi, Excellencies, distinguished guests, and friends of NCRI, thank you for having me again today. When I stood before you in January of last year, I told you that the year ahead should be a year of hope, a year of action, and a year of change. I did not know how much change or how quickly it would occur. I did not know that within months the region would be remade, that a war would be fought, that a ceasefire would be in place, and that the theocratic regime in Tehran, terrorizing their own people and the world for nearly half a century, would be forced to negotiate. So let me begin where I began last year, because the truth has only grown stronger in the telling. For the people of Iran, for those who believe in her and in the promise of a freer future, this is the most promising hour since 1979. The regime is weaker than it has been in decades. And this year, like the last, must be a year of hope, of action, and of change. Consider how far we have come from a year ago. I told you that at the beginning of the end of the Iranian regime's primacy had already started. And the principal backer of Hamas and Hezbollah would reap the whirlwind it had sown with the demented massacre of civilians on October 7th. Then came the whirlwind. Hezbollah was weakened in Lebanon. The regime in Damascus fell, and Hamas was broken in Gaza. Nor was the reckoning confined to the Middle East. In my own hemisphere, the Venezuelan Maduro regime, Tehran's partner in actions and sanctions evasion, and a haven for its operatives, found that it was time to go, that its time had run out too. And the architecture of Iranian influence that took nearly 50 years was attacked in a matter of months. Many of you in this room helped build a foundation for that brighter future. When the history of this period is written, you will again hold a bright page in it. The first pillars to the future of a new Iran have been laid. An agreement has begun, a process towards the historic future, and a future deal has begun. A nuclear arms race in the most volatile region on Earth has been prevented, a war that has been brought to a pause, and the goal of eliminating the threats to the American people from the regime after 5 decades, the objective of Operation Epic Fury, has never been more closely realized. And let me say it plainly, because it is the truth, and the truth deserves to be spoken about. No administration in 5 decades has positioned the Iranian people to end this regime's reign of terror than the way President Trump has done. None. For 47 years, by the effort by this tyrannical regime and its proxies who destabilized the Middle East has been its strategy of survival. The chaos in Lebanon, the bloodshed in Syria, the terror in Gaza, the mines in the Strait of Hormuz, none of it was incidental. Exporting violence abroad has how the terroristic clerics preserved their war at home, their rule at home. A regime that cannot feed its own people, that crushes its own sons and daughters in the street, learned long ago they could only endure by setting the region on fire. In June of 2025, Operation Midnight Hammer struck the heart of its nuclear program, one that you brought to the future, into the visibility of the Western world. A precise and powerful warning that the path to the bomb was closed. The draconian regime did not listen. It chose to rebuild in secret, to rearm, and to gamble that the resolve of the world would fade. It gambled wrong. And then on the 28th of February of this year, the United States and its allies did what never have been dared, Operation Epic Fury. In a matter of days, not months, not years, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and the entire top military command of the Iranian regime was eliminated. The architects of 47 years of terror, men who ordered the killing of Americans and the Israelis and their own countrymen, were gone. The majority of ballistic missiles meant to threaten Europe and our troops, and one day the American homeland, destroyed. The Navy that helped to close the world's shipping lanes, destroyed. The defense industrial base that let this regime stand and maintain power was destroyed, so that it cannot be rebuilt. This restructured the entire balance of power in the region, executed with precision and fortitude that the world did not believe was possible, and what no previous administration had done, despite their responsibility to the American people in keeping them safe. Now President Trump is closing the door to Iran ever having a nuclear weapon. The regime has committed never to acquire a nuclear weapon, and its surrender and downblend its stockpile of enriched uranium over 60 days has begun with technical talks. Now, what does denuclearization mean for the region that has bled for half a century under the shadow of this regime's ambitions? It means the world's foremost sponsor of terror will never build the single most destabilizing weapon in the Middle East and the world. It means the nuclear umbrella in which Tehran has sheltered its proxies is gone. A regime that cannot extort its neighbors with a bomb has surrendered that bomb. It cannot blackmail the world from a program that has begun to diminish and dismantle. The fear that hung over every capital, from Riyadh to Tel Aviv to Brussels, the fear of a nuclear-armed theocracy has begun to lift. Iran dismantling its nuclear program is a doorway for the Iranian people to shape their future. Stripping this regime of its ambition and ability to acquire this most catastrophic weapon does not make it free. It makes it weak. And a weak regime is one the Iranian people can finally confront on their own. The bomb was never meant to defend Iran. It was meant to defend the dogmatic and abusive men who rule her. Taken away, and what remains is a government that stands exposed before the people it has oppressed for 47 years. In here, I want to invoke an old Russian proverb, one President Reagan made famous, and one that should be carved above the door of every negotiation room from Geneva to Islamabad. Trust, but verify. Verify, verify. Trust, but verify. Few on this earth have earned the authority to say those words like people in this room. On the 14th of August, 2002, drawn on the intelligence gathered by extraordinary risk by its network inside Iran, this council stood up in Washington and revealed to the world its two hidden sites, the uranium enrichment plant in Natanz and the heavy water facility at Arak. The regime had to disguise them as agricultural and desert eradication prospects. You exposed them for what they were, two parallel roads to the bomb. That single revelation forced open the doors to international inspection and set in motion 6 United Nations resolutions. So when I say trust but verify, understand that verification is not an abstraction to this council. It is your legacy. And you must be the conscience that ensures every barrel of uranium leaves, every centrifuge stops, and every promise on that page becomes a fact on the ground. The regime has lied since its inception, and it will again lie if it is permitted. The darkness to do so, and it is our duty, your duty, to not permit it. That is why this hour belongs to the men and women. That is why this hour belongs to the men and women of Iran, and is why disarmament must be understood as the first step of something far larger, the foundation on which the 10-point plan, the future of Iran, can be built. The window is open wider than at any moment in a generation, and windows do not stay open forever. You must aggressively confront the regime. You must plant your flag, the people's renewal back in Iran. A resistance movement cannot be in name alone. It will be hard. It will be costly. It must be done. The theocratic regime in Tehran will not leave voluntarily. You must force it. The hope is here. Now must come the action. Thank you for having me, Mr. Dyer.